Up the inside of Coates. Barker gets too heavily involved. And that's Whitehead and Coates.
I know my destiny. I know my destiny. I know my destiny. I know my destiny.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the VRRC as we approach the end of the Cammus Simulation GTV3 Championship. We've got just 2 weeks of racing to go, 4 more races, and tonight it is the second part of the Japanese double header. A week ago, we raced at the former home of the Japanese Grand Prix at Fuji. Tonight, we head to its current home at Suzuka, a real driver's favourite, a perfect place to stretch the legs of these challenging GT cars that have been putting on such a good show over the last month and a half or so. And with a championship battle that could not be more finely poised, we're in for a fantastic championship run-in over the next couple of weeks. Andy McEwen here, as ever, in the commentary box, joined by Jack Oliphant. Jack, we're getting to that time of the season again, my favourite time, where the points really start to matter. And yet again, I don't know how we keep doing this, we have got a championship that could go realistically any one of four ways, and a handful of points covering those top drivers.
It's exciting, isn't it, really? The VRRC never fails to sort of get us on our toes when it comes to the pointy end of the season, and practice looks like a lot of those championship contenders have put in the work this week around Suzuka, so it's getting taken seriously, and for good reason. There's some good prizes that we'll obviously be bringing you up to date with in a couple of minutes' time. But first of all, as Andy said, this is the penultimate round. We are getting to the pointy end. We were at Fuji. We started off, though, all the way back when, in 1st of February, around Bahrain. Then we went to Monza, Istanbul, Royal Army, Watkins Glen. And that pretty much brings us up to speed before next week we finish off this miraculous season at Silverstone on the 22nd of March.
Yes, we do. It's been, as I said, a really great season across a nice variety of tracks. Many of them have produced perhaps better racing than we anticipated, actually. Not necessarily, I made this point last week, not necessarily the sort of three-wide, slipstreaming, all-action racing that we've been used to across our last few championships, but a much more tactical style of racing where overtaking is possible, but it is a challenge where tyre management has been key across lots of those races, and I expect that to be the same here at Suzuka. This place is notorious for being tough on tyres, and I suspect that that will be the case again over the course of tonight. 2 20-minute races coming up shortly. Jack said a week ago we raced at Fuji, and it was certainly an interesting night as far as the championship is concerned. In the second race, only one of the top 4 drivers in the points actually made it inside the top 5. It meant that although Eric Axel and Scott Bugner, I should say, scored reasonably well, it was a non-championship contender who came out with the highest number of points. Kyle Felvers, 3rd in race 1, a victory in race number 2, and that was the kind of consistency, Jack, that nobody else could quite put together last week.
No, and we came off the broadcast thinking that the Porsche had done a terrible job, but Kyle obviously proved that that's absolute rubbish because he was absolutely flying, and I think a lot of people in the YouTube chat were very happy that he'd done well. But again, a great example of how well these cars are balanced. We had Felverson first in the Porsche, we had Axelson in the Chevrolet in second, and Bugner in the BMW in 3rd place in terms of points. So nice to see lots of manufacturers getting involved, and well done to Kyle for stepping it up because it has been a bit of a tough season for him. He's not really been at the races. He did have to miss a weekend in Dubai, of course, but you know what? He came back and he's finishing this race strong. Right, how does that line up to the championship tables, though? Andy's already said that Kyle's not really in it in terms of a first place run-in, but he is in terms of a prize. We'll get to that in a second. Joel Lask, though, sits at the tippy top with 200 points with Eric Axelson, only 5 behind him. Scott Bugner, only 7 behind him. Elliot Dalton's 8 behind him. It's really very, very close between the top 4. It's really going to be a bit of a nail-biter, to be honest. Josh Martin is in the hunt for a prize. 5th place is a prize, and he's got Kyle Felvers and Nicky Taylor, the 2 HFT teammates, sort of, in amongst it with him as well. Oliver Gibson in 8th place, Reece Bell and Andy Carroll, 2 drivers that have really stepped it up again this season in the Cammus Simulation GTV3 Championship and got on the podium as well. Even one of them winning a driver of the round, and I think that was Reece Bell 2 weeks ago. So yeah, brilliant to have a really stacked grid here, Andy, and they're all doing a brilliant job.
And a shout out to one driver not represented in that top 10, Paul Laramie, who got his first podium of the season in the reverse grid race, sort of continuing this trend of surprise podium finishes that we've had over the last couple of rounds. And he'll be certainly aiming to do the same again tonight. But as Jack said, realistically, we're now looking at those top 4 in the championship with just 4 races to go, drop scores to take into account as well. It is just 8 points covering the top 4 drivers. You could not script it. That is how the championship table looks, and all of those top 4 drivers will now be feeling pretty confident that they will be walking away from this season with a prize of some sort, because new for this season, we're extending the prizes and giving more people an opportunity to take away some goodies come the end of the season. As ever, it's the top 3 who get the really good stuff, though. The direct drive Cammus sim racing wheel and the winner's trophy for the champion. Still none the wiser as to who that's going to be. Second place in the championship gets the GTF1 Sim Race seat and second place trophy. And it's another trophy, a third place one, alongside a 27-inch gaming display, courtesy of our sponsors, Aegon, for the driver who comes home in third place. Fourth place receives 2 hours of driver coaching at the VRRC, and it's 1 hour of sim practice for our fifth placed driver. And that is an interesting battle in and of itself, really, because whilst Josh Martin's dropped out of main championship contention, he is one of a number of drivers gunning for a position inside the top 5. So that's another storyline to monitor over the next couple of weeks. We also have the prize draw, again introduced specifically for this season. Any driver who competes in at least 7 of the 8 rounds and finishes outside of the top 5 of the points will be entered into a prize draw for a chance to win one of 2 1-hour sim practice sessions at the VRRC. There is also the Driver of the Round award as well, so it really is a little bit like Oprah, isn't it? Everyone gets a prize, more or less, or at least a chance to win a prize come season's end, which is always nice to see. So Suzuka then the host venue for tonight's race. Qualifying is just getting underway now, but before we jump into the live on-track action, let's take a look at this real driver's favourite circuit that will play host to tonight's racing.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cammus Simulation GTV3 Championship. I'm Lewis Edwards and I'm going to be taking you round the track guide for round 7 at Suzuka. Heading into turn 1, spot your braking point, bleed off the brakes but keep a little bit to keep the weight on the nose, get back for the second apex, use up all of the road on the exit. Do the S's, just treat it one corner at a time and power through, mounting a little bit of the apex curbs to get some rotation but you're keeping good momentum all throughout. You want to sacrifice this right-hander a little bit to make sure that you can stay right for the left-hander at Dunlop curve just here. Be careful getting on the power, it's very easy to drift out onto the grass there. Now we're going through Dunlop into the Degners, a real commitment corner right here. Let's hammer the curb, watch track limits on the exit, and then for the second one you want to use as much of that apex curb and then all of the exit curb that you can. We've got the hairpin. Be careful to apply slow steering lock through here as the cars are very slidey on entry. Get back to the power. In the BMW you want a short shift to second there to get a nice good run. Watch the traction control kicking in on the exit. We're now going through turn 12, easily flat out, approaching Spoon Curve. So you want to get back over to the right hand side and go down the gears for Spoon Curve. And then back on the power, then back off the power. Get it lined up for a good exit, get back to power as early as you can and use up all of the road on the exit. Cutting to the left here to cut down on the distance by a metre or 2. Might gain you that extra mile an hour come qualifying in the race. Into 130R, big commitment here. Send it in, don't use the apex curb but you can use this exit curb here. Then brake late as you dare for the final chicane. Mount the curb a little bit for the right-hander, use a lot on the left here, use up all of the exit curb, and in qualifying take the shortest route to the finish line, which is on the right here, and that completes a very fast-paced lap of Suzuka.
So qualifying underway then here at Suzuka for the Cammus Simulation GTV3 Championship. A crucial round here and a crucial qualifying session, easy for me to say, because not only will it set the grid for that first race of the night, but also there is a championship point available for qualifying on pole position. And actually, Jack, we have seen, haven't we, all season long, track position, need to get my teeth in, track position is crucial in this championship. So far, every driver who has qualified on pole for race 1 has converted that into a race victory. And for those top 4 in the championship, if one of them can get on pole position here tonight, that is a good omen.
Yeah, it feels very GT style, doesn't it? That's the fact that the qualifying means an awful lot, unlike some of the touring car championships that we've been doing in the past, where you pretty much, as long as you're in the top 5, you're in the running, aren't you? Here, it does seem that, you know, if you get onto that front row of the grid, you've got the best chance possible, and if you can get a decent start as well, that's crucial, because a few of these cars are difficult to get off the line. You can run away with it and let the rest of them fight over second place behind you, and it's the way it's happened a couple of times. I think we've only had one driver who's actually done the double, and I think it maybe Scott Bugney, or the one with the stats there, Andy. Has he got 2 race victories from qualifying on pole?
Yes. Well done, Jack. Yes, he has. He is, however, I'm going to burst your bubble, not the only one. I will give you 3 guesses, and you should only need one of them as to who the other of those might be.
Is it Eric Axelsen?
It is indeed.
Yeah,
Yes,
there
we
we
did at
go.
the season opener at Bahrain and at Watkins Glen a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, difficult to do to win 2 races. That's one thing that has only happened once this season. The driver who did the double on the same night, Jack, was...
Eric Axelsen.
Oh, so close. Elliot Dalton-Ayres at Istanbul, where
Was
he did the triple, actually. Qualified on pole, won race 1, won race 2. And he has, I think, been flying under the radar this season a little bit. We've been talking about him a lot. We've been saying how well he's been doing in that Ford GT. But actually, the last couple of weeks, Elliot Dalton-Ayres has not exactly had a starring role in what's been going on at the front of the field, but he's been quietly bagging those points, and he's still there, 4th in the championship, every bit as much of a contender as the other 3.
No, I think Istanbul was really where he announced himself, and I don't think many other drivers, in fact, I'm looking at the tables now, actually, and Joel Lask, Eric Axelsen, Scott Bugner, they didn't particularly have very good time at Istanbul. So all of a sudden, Dalton Ayres is just absolutely dominating, came at a perfect time, and that's what cemented him as a championship runner. And then ever since then, he's just sort of been picking up the odd, not the odd good result, he's consistently around the top 5, isn't he? But he's not really, again, thrown his hat into the ring for many race victories. He's just been, again, just really consistent, which is a good way of getting yourself into a championship running, to be fair. But now he finds himself in 4th place, 8 points behind. He really does need to do something special to catch up with the 2 BMWs and Eric Axelsen, because in practice, especially Scott Bugner, he was absolutely flying. I think he was the fastest in practice by about half a second, Lewis Edwards said to us. Eric Axelsen was, I think, 2nd or 3rd as well. So it's going to be really tight, but Elliot really does need to find something and pull it out the hat.
Yeah, absolutely. He hasn't had a win for a little while, Elliot Dalton-Ayres, but he has been sort of hitting the top 5s pretty much every race. In fact, in, I think, 7 of the last 8 races. In fact, no, 8 of the last 9 races, Dalton-Ayres has been in the top 5. That's really, really good consistency. Contrast that with Scott Bugner, meanwhile, who I think for a long time we were sort of calling the championship leader because he was scoring really well in the points. Well, he has only been on the podium twice in the last 7 races, but they were both race wins. So Scott's been a bit more sort of hit and miss, or all or nothing really through the season so far. And well, he may well be hoping to add to his all column tonight, because he has gone fastest so far in this qualifying session with, we are reliably informed, a lap time that is already quicker than anybody has been in practice. And that at the early stages of qualifying, Jack, where the track is not at its grippiest, where the drivers are perhaps still putting in some banker laps, is seriously impressive.
Yeah, I think the track does sort of develop, doesn't it, with this new system that we're working on with VRRC. So, again, it's going to only get grippier, but it's very difficult to get the tyres into temperature, Lewis Edwards was telling us as well. So the fact that he's done that really early on with the tyres maybe a little bit inconsistent, with the track not quite as grippy as he would like, that BMW is on rails tonight. I think Felvis and a few of the Porsches, the Chevrolets, maybe they're going to struggle a little bit more with the curbs. I'm not 100% sure, but that is the complaints that we've been having over the course of the season, whereas Scott and Joel have never had that complaint once about the BMW. It might not be as fast in a straight line or in the braking, but then their apex speed, their mid-corner speed has always been really good in the massive BMWs. So maybe that's helping them here at Suzuka. It's a very technical circuit. It's a little bit difficult to sort of nail and get the lap time in, and especially the consistency might be a problem.
Indeed so. It is also a track, as I touched upon earlier on, where tyre wear, I think, will be key, but perhaps less so for the Porsches, because it is the front tyres that take the real beating around here, particularly through that first half of the lap, climbing up through the snake, through the S's towards Dunlop Curve, really leaning on those front tyres, whereas the Porsche, of course, with all of that weight over the back of the car, is a lot lighter on its front tyres. So we may see those cars really come into their own towards the end of the races. As we've said several times this season, the cars are all set up to be roughly the same performance-wise, but they will inevitably have different strengths and weaknesses because they are designed so very differently. Front engine, mid-engine, rear engine, they're all going to have slightly different handling characteristics over a lap, over a race even. They can be very evenly matched, but they will generate their lap times in slightly different ways. For LB Motorsport, this is shaping up very nicely then. Scott Bugner and Joel Lask set to share the front row of the grid, and that, Jack, is the other storyline I'm really fascinated by over these remaining 4 races, because I can't remember the last time that those 2 teammates were both in contention for a championship this late in the day. That is absolutely the case now. Lask, remember, leads the points. He is 7 points ahead of Scott Bugner in 3rd, and these two don't have the best track record when it comes to working together anyway. I suppose I was going to say the gloves are off. Some would argue they've always been off between those two, but that's going to be a really interesting dynamic, fighting your teammate as well as two other drivers for a championship.
Yeah, I think we were chatting to Scott Bugner either last week or the week before. He's always seems to be in our commentary box at some point over the course of the evening, and he's been saying that, you know, between him and Joel, it's not really a teamwork style relationship. It's more the fact that they help each other set the cars up and everything. They probably do practice together and everything like that. But in the race, it is a case of they will race each other and race each other hard. So don't expect Joel Lask and Scott Bugner to work together to pull away from the likes of Eric Axelson or Carl Felvers, who seems to have picked up the pace here in qualifying compared to his practice times. It's going to be very interesting. You're right, how hard to race each other. I expect just as hard as everybody else.
I think so, which actually is exactly how it should be, really.
Yes.
Certainly when they're both fighting for a championship, you know, they can't really afford to work together because you're helping your enemy at the end of the day. Yes, from a team perspective, it would be nice if one of them could wrap the title up, but, you know, both drivers want to make sure that it's them if possible. So Bugner at the moment, 3/10 to the good in qualify. We're on board with his teammate Joel Lask as he hops over those curbs through the final chicane, round the final right-hander, which is flat out, but it's a little bit tighter than you think. And let's see whether he can improve. He does improve. It's a 56.2, still only good enough for second, but Scott Bugner is going even quicker. Look at that, a 55.798, and Eric Axelson also into the 55s now. The track is getting quicker, and it's a longer lap this, Jack, as well. So drivers starting a lap now. We might not find out for another couple of minutes how much they're improving, but I suspect that the track will be a lot better by the time they get round to complete what should be their penultimate lap.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit of an annoying lap, though, isn't it? Because it's so technical and hard at the first braking zone, where if you screwed that one up, you have to wait for so long to be able to get another chance. And with only 4 minutes to go, the likes of Scott Bugner, Eric Axelson, they'll know that this is potentially their penultimate lap. And they're going to have to throw everything at it now and try not to cook the tyres, because they know they've got maybe just one more in it after this. But, you know, it's a bit of a measuring game of how long you go for, or whether you go all out for this one and just call it a day straight after that one. But Scott Bugner with an absolute flyer, loving life. Eric Axelson probably thought he was on for a pole position time there before Scott Bugner went and just pipped him to it yet again and extended the goalpost. Carl Felvers is on a green lap as well. Elliot Dalton-Ayres is also on green. So championship runners are starting to get a bit quicker.
They are indeed. Dalton-Ayres is the one with the work to do, really, down in 7th place, whereas Lask, Axelson and Bugner, his three big title rivals, are all inside the top 3. Josh Martin, of course, a driver many of us expected to be talking about as a championship contender. He is mathematically still in contention, but it looks now increasingly likely to be handing that number 1 back to somebody else come the end of the season after that nightmarish run at Fuji a week ago. 15th in race 1 was really the final nail in his coffin as far as his championship aspirations were concerned, but he's in the top 5 just behind Carl Felvers, who again seems to have found some good pace. Scott Bugner there outbraking himself slightly into the final chicane. Now will he head for the pit lane? Yes, he's almost crashes in the pit lane, does crash in the pit lane, bounces off the barriers. Now he should, I think, be able to get the car repaired when he pulls into the pit box. Thankfully didn't get stranded out on track, but that's a sign of how hard he's pushing, because Jack, they only just have enough time to get this pit stop done.
Yeah, we'll see if he can get back out and able to do an outlap and then start one more flyer. But Carl Felvers has just gone 3 green sectors in a row to put himself